Have you ever imagined a hero, clad in a uniform glittering with medals, halted in the midst of his most sacred mission? At the bustling Phoenix airport, Colonel John Harrison was struck by an unimaginable shock. He was denied boarding while escorting the remains of Private Michael Dawson, the 21-year-old soldier who laid down his life for his country. A vague policy, an evasive glance, and a single mistaken decision ignited a storm that would rock the entire nation. Will the loyalty of a soldier be buried under the weight of injustice? Or will strangers, their smartphones, and the power of justice write a story that moves millions of hearts? If you believe in honor and solidarity, hit subscribe and ring the bell so you won't miss such inspiring stories. Let's uncover the moment that brought all of America to tears and prove that our voices can change everything. Phoenix International Airport on an early April morning became more chaotic than ever. Passengers jostled one another through the security gates, their rolling suitcases clattering against the floor as they collided in a frantic search for their departure gates. The crackling announcements over the loudspeakers rang out incessantly, mingling with the laughter of children at play, the hurried calls of adults searching for luggage, and the constant ping of mobile phones notifying of new emails. Everywhere, eyes were glued to screens, scanning updates on delayed flights, emergency gate changes, and an unexpected storm barreling toward the East Coast. Amid that bustling sea of humanity, Colonel John Harrison appeared as a point of calm in the storm, his dark uniform crisply pressed, each metal gleaming under the harsh halogen lights. His polished black leather shoes tapped solemnly on the cool tile floor, echoing like the steady beat of a heart bound to an unbreakable mission. His steps were neither hurried nor hesitant. His gaze never strayed from the path ahead, burdened with a weight that only he could know. Harrison was not here for glory, nor to catch a flight to a new combat zone, but to fulfill his final promise, to bring home the remains of Private Michael Dawson, a young soldier, back to his family. The flag-draped coffin, carefully placed on a specialized trolley, followed him slowly past the check-in counters. Dawson had fallen in an ambush on the banks of the Tigris River early last year, and since that day, Harrison had vowed to return every last piece of his comrade to his homeland. As he approached the Blue Sky Airlines check-in desk, all sound seemed to vanish. Harrison laid down his military orders, the red-stamped authorization, and his identification papers on the small counter. Across from him, a young attendant, Emily, nodded politely, yet her eyes betrayed her confusion. She looked down. Her nails, painted a soft pink, danced across the keyboard, and her brow furrowed. "Sir," she stammered, "I need to verify your documents once more." Harrison's brow creased, but he remained silent. He slid the folder aside, studying her face. There was no anger in his eyes, only a profound stillness, as if he were peering through the barrier between them, searching her heart for understanding, or at least an explanation. Emily whispered to her colleague, her voice so low that Harrison leaned in to catch her words. She avoided his gaze, her lips tightening with inner conflict. The silence stretched on, broken only by the rustle of paper and the occasional outcry of a passenger behind them. Then she lifted her head, forcing a strained smile. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's an issue with your ticket. We cannot allow you to board." His heart felt as though it were being squeezed in a cold iron band. Though Harrison had faced countless dangers and seen comrades fall before his very eyes, today's pain was of an entirely different nature. This wasn't an artillery shell, nor a flicker of flame in the Afghan brush, but the crushing indifference of red tape at a place where every passing second could become a final memory. He stood silent, his broad shoulders unmoving. The crowd behind him gradually fell quiet, as if sensing the weight of the moment. All that remained were the whir of the computer, the blinking of indicator lights, and the occasional call from a colleague. "Emily, have you sorted this yet?" After a pause, Emily cleared her throat, striving to steady her voice. "I'm truly sorry, sir, but according to the system, this flight is closed and your ticket does not match the passenger data." Harrison's tone was gentle. "I am escorting the remains of a soldier who sacrificed his life for his country. All documents are valid under orders from command headquarters. Will you please tell me exactly what the issue is?" Emily's eyes flicked over the screen. Then she averted her gaze from Harrison's steady stare. It's just policy, sir. I can't do anything more." A fierce surge of anger shot through Harrison's mind, but he restrained it, knowing that fury would achieve nothing, and imagining Private Dawson awaiting him beyond the runway made him unwilling to relent. Everything hinged on one final step, and yet that step seemed impossible. He exhaled slowly, feeling the air conditioning draft brush across the desk, carrying the faint scent of coffee from the neighboring kiosk. Everything else faded away, leaving only his mission. Harrison bowed his head, setting aside his emotions, then looked Emily squarely in the eye. "Could you please call your supervisor?" Emily shook her head slightly, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry, sir. I will help you contact them, but if they refuse as well, then—" Harrison nodded once. "Thank you, Emily. Please do it as soon as you can." He brushed a few beads of sweat from his shoulder with a trembling hand. Behind him, the airport noise returned, passengers queuing, suitcases rolling, and a toddler crying out in exhaustion. Those sounds only magnified the colonel's solitude among the throng. The image of Private Dawson, his youthful face, his innocent eyes, etched itself into Harrison's mind, urging him to persevere. Now he was more than an officer. He was the embodiment of gratitude on behalf of the entire military and one bereaved family. His grief was beyond words, yet his resolve was strong enough to overcome any obstacle. He remained motionless, like an oak standing firm in a storm, bracing for the next blow in order to rise again. And in that moment, he knew, even if bureaucracy obstructed him, his devotion to the fallen soldier would not allow defeat. He would find a way, by any means necessary, to fulfill his promise and bring Michael Dawson home. Colonel Harrison stood upright, each vertebra seemingly forged by the weight of responsibility pressing on his shoulders. He drew a deep breath, the cool air from the conditioning slipping through the folds of his uniform, awakening every sense. The neon lights of Phoenix Airport's terminal ceiling glinted off the medals on his chest, silver and gold ribbons that had witnessed so many bitter days on brutal battlefields. But today, those medals were proof of only one final mission: to bring home the remains of Private Michael Dawson. Each step he took led him toward the check-in desk, where the flag-draped casket rested solemnly on its trolley. On its lid, the stars and stripes lay taut, the white stars interwoven with red stripes, symbols of freedom, serving as a poignant reminder of a young man's sacrifice. In Harrison's heart, memories of Dawson surged back, the youthful face, eyes sparkling with hope, a light he had not seen since enduring hundreds of days under fire. When he placed his documents and military orders on Blue Sky's counter, Emily, the young check-in agent, swiftly accepted them. Her eyes flickered with confusion, as if she had never before encountered an officer bearing his comrade's grief. She bent to type, her face tightening, then stammered, "Sir, I need to review your paperwork once more." But her voice was so low that Harrison had to strain to hear. He studied her expression, searching for any clue to her unexplained hesitation. After a tense moment of silence, Emily offered a forced smile, unnatural on her lips. "I'm sorry, sir, but there's an issue with your ticket. We cannot allow you to board." The words rang out clearly, yet Harrison felt as though an invisible blade had cut into his chest. This was not his first obstacle, but in that moment, he understood that the boundary between life and death did not lie solely on the battlefield. He remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the agent. Behind him, the queue of passengers murmured anxiously. Whispers spread like startled bees. They all turned toward the desk, curious at the difference between an officer escorting a fallen comrade and ordinary travelers. A man in a red jacket leaned to his wife. "What's happening?" His voice was soft, yet she heard and looked at Harrison in confusion. Nearby, a young man gripping his boarding pass frowned. Unease etched across his face. The air, already oppressive, grew stifling. The terminal's clamor receded, leaving only Harrison's breath and the steady thump of his heart. Everything around him slowed. The blinking lights, the background announcements, even Emily's averted gaze. He pictured the farewell ceremonies under desert stars, sunsets over parched land, the mournful bugle calls echoing through the night. After a moment, Emily nodded and hurriedly placed a call to her supervisor. "Richard, we have an emergency at check-in desk 12. Harrison watched as a middle-aged man approached. Richard, the supervisor, stopped before them, arms crossed, his weary eyes betraying impatience. His gray suit could not hide the creases at his eyes or the arrogance only time could carve. "Sir," Richard intoned calmly, yet insincerely, "we have a policy in place and cannot make exceptions." His words floated through the air like a heartless announcement, offering no sympathy for the pain behind the military orders. Harrison ground his teeth, frustration swelling. He bowed his head for a few seconds of silence, reminding himself that a colonel, no matter how angry, must not yield to emotion. He lifted his chin, his gaze slicing toward Richard. "I have escorted remains before. I know the procedure. What is the real reason?" Confusion flickered across Richard's face, though he forced composure. Clearing his throat, he repeated mechanically, "It's simply an additional security measure. Nothing personal." Those words soothed a few onlookers, but could not calm Harrison. He straightened his shoulders, standing as solid as twin pillars. For a moment, Harrison fought to contain his anger. Behind him, the crowd surged with whispers. A woman further back murmured, "They can't do that to a soldier." Her voice trembled with outrage and helplessness. Tension rippled outward, every eye now on Harrison, anticipating his next move. Some raised phones, ready to record. Others gripped loved ones' hands, seeking moral support. The entire terminal fell silent, an invisible line drawn between the calm within and the chaos beyond. Harrison closed his eyes, inhaled slowly, then opened them. He knew that every word he spoke now could change the course of events, but he could not break protocol, nor did he wish to incite violence. He was the embodiment of discipline and respect for the fallen, so he continued in silence, his inner voice echoing, "Michael Dawson, I will not let the son of our nation lie here." In that moment, the light streaming through the terminal's windows seemed to shine directly upon him, honoring the image of an elder soldier fighting a different battle, one against callous regulations. And in the silence before the storm of words, everyone realized this was no ordinary airport procedure. This was the instant when dignity, honor, and gratitude for those who have fallen were put to the test. No one there knew what would happen next, but one thing was certain. Colonel Harrison's unwavering resolve, coupled with his determination to bring Private Dawson's remains home, would transform this seemingly hopeless moment into a new chapter, one forever etched in the hearts of all who witnessed it. In the stifling expanse of the terminal, the roar of engines and the blare of announcements receded, yielding to a tension taut as a violin string. From the back of the line, a warm, slightly hoarse voice rose. "Sir, is there an issue with his military permit?" The crisp syllables cut through the hush like an arrow in the night, drawing every gaze. The speaker was Frank, a Marine Corps veteran, his salt and pepper hair peeking beneath a well-worn baseball cap stamped boldly with the USMC emblem. His eyes still sparkled with keen resolve, having witnessed countless injustices, yet never bowing to any power. Richard, the oversized suit supervisor, shifted uneasily, stammering, "No, it's not a permit issue, it's just standard procedure." His voice tripped over itself, as if dodging Frank's piercing stare. Frank's eyes remained half open, fixed on Richard in silent challenge. His lips tightened, each hard line on his weary face etched by time and trial. Frank folded his arms across his chest, the sinews of his biceps rolling beneath his snug black t-shirt, a testament to days of disciplined hardship on distant battlefields. He spoke, his tone low yet steel hard. "I've been through security thousands of times, and never have I seen procedure stop a soldier from escorting his brother home. So what's really going on?" The question rang out, not only to Richard, but echoing through every corner of the terminal, awakening compassion in each traveler. Chaos erupted around them. Phones whipped out in an instant, camera flashes flickering sporadically. Some rushed to record, while curious eyes turned to Colonel Harrison as if he were a returning hero. The queue, once a blur of passing figures, froze like statues, sharing the collective heartbeat of suspense. Amid the tableau, a young woman stepped forward. Sarah, about 25, slender yet purposeful in her movements. She raised her phone, screen trained on the scene. Voice trembling but determined, she said, "I'm live streaming. People need to see this." Those few words unleashed a wave of indignation. The terminal seemed to awaken from slumber. A gray-hooded youth, shoulders trembling with outrage, muttered, "This is wrong." Nearby, a middle-aged woman, Mary, her features carved by worry, clutched her purse, voice choking, "They can't treat him like this!" Instantly, the hashtag #HadLetHimFly surged on Twitter, spotlighting the airline's refusal. Emily, perched behind her computer, turned pale, her fingers shaking over the keyboard. She peeked through the window, horror dawning as she beheld the uprising. The frosted glass door behind her creaked shut, and Richard darted inside the control room, clearly seeking to stem the rising tide of data and public outcry. But the spark had ignited, and the flame spread irresistibly. Sarah pivoted the camera toward Harrison, the phone's glow illuminating his solemn face. "They really won't let you board?" Her question hung in the charged silence, only to be met by Harrison's quiet nod. "That's right." His words, soft yet resonating across the terminal, drew every eye. Within minutes, Sarah's video amassed thousands of views. Comments flooded in. "Why is this happening? Where's the justice?" Interspersed with words of support. "Stay strong, Colonel. We stand with you." The crowd ceased to be apathetic passengers, instead becoming living witnesses, each person a fragment in the groundswell of protest. On the other side of the screen, Emily's computer buzzed with a new alert. She glanced down. #let him fly trending. Sweat beaded on her brow. Her gaze darted from the desk to the keys, as if grappling with forces beyond her control. Behind the glass door, Richard slammed his hand on the desk, trying in vain to maintain composure before his colleagues. Yet the footfalls outside betrayed his disarray, as he sought to reclaim authority. Under the pressure from Sarah and the gathering crowd, more than an airport protocol was being challenged. It was an entrenched system confronting the demand for change. The social media blaze continued to rage. Hundreds around filmed and live-streamed, capturing every minute detail. Harrison's unwavering gaze, Emily's face etched with worry, Frank's strong silhouette blocking the counter. Some blew whistles into their phones. Others chanted slogans. "Justice for the soldier," all together forming a chaotic yet fiercely alive tableau. On Sarah's phone screen, the view count soared. Comments poured in without pause. "Share this far and wide. They must let him board. We cannot stay silent." The crowd behind her began cheering, voices rising in unison, as if they would condense every ounce of outrage in this terminal into a single roar. In that moment, Harrison felt the power of the collective, the unspoken support of strangers in a foreign land. He sighed, eyes drifting toward the exit gate leading to the runway, where the flag-draped casket awaited. His heart swelled with belief. If he could endure, if public opinion rallied for justice, then even the hardest policy would have to yield. The neon lights overhead flickered, casting a halo of steadfastness across his features. Together, Frank, Sarah, Jake, Mary, and countless others, they were forging a small miracle amid overwhelming adversity. They were not merely recording a historic moment. They were writing a new chapter in unity, honoring silent sacrifices. And in everyone's eyes, Colonel Harrison was not alone. He was fighting for a promise, for a fallen comrade, and for the conviction that justice would ultimately prevail. Beneath the shimmering glow of hundreds of phone screens, the image of an undaunted soldier emerged. An old warrior steadfast as a lighthouse in a stormy sea, looking toward a new horizon where justice and gratitude never fade. The boarding announcement for a delayed flight crackled over the speakers, slicing through the thick atmosphere of the terminal. But to most, it was just incidental noise amid the emotional maelstrom. Every pair of eyes, from the ticket counters to the seating areas, turned simultaneously toward the blue sky check-in desk, where what was unfolding felt like a full-blown scandal. Jake, the young man in a gray hoodie, cap pulled low to shadow half his face, leaned against a nearby pillar, whistling a wandering tune to steady himself before he spoke. "Damn, this is blowing up everywhere." His whistle rang out softly, yet close enough to draw curious glances, as those nearby turned their heads in surprise. On Jake's phone screen, a veteran-run Twitter account blazed in bold text. "Let our soldiers come home. Blue sky will pay." The all-caps banner shouted across the silent space, amassing hundreds of shares in an instant. Beside Jake, Mary, a middle-aged woman with streaks of silver in her hair and worry etched on her face, gasped as her phone's interaction count skyrocketed, her fingers trembling as she swiped, as though fearful the screen might ignite under her touch. Beneath the terminal's dim lights, Facebook and Twitter icons pulsed relentlessly, broadcasting furious comments. "Unacceptable. Where is the justice? Honor their sacrifice." And then, A breaking news alert lit up the news app. The CNN headline blinked on screens everywhere. U.S. Army colonel denied boarding while escorting fallen soldier. That headline acted as a catalyst, unleashing a media storm officially. Passengers stopped mere observation. They snapped photos, recorded videos, fired off messages, and posted non-stop stories. A man in the crowd suddenly burst with indignation. "Is this how they treat our hero?" His voice boomed across the seating area. Heads swiveled, eyes widened. At the center of this uproar, Colonel John Harrison remained statue still, speaking no word, making no move, merely standing tall, gaze fixed forward. In that moment, he was no longer an officer. He was the embodiment of steadfast loyalty and service. Despite the ceiling fans stirring gusts around his shoulders, he did not flinch, as though his body had turned to bronze. Next to Harrison, Frank, the gray-haired Marine veteran, still resolute after all these years, stepped forward. His worn cap's USMC emblem gleamed, testament to unwavering allegiance. Frank's eyes softened as he looked at Harrison. Then he turned to Richard, the blue sky supervisor, with a voice both low and ironclad. "I've seen a lot in my life, but this—" He shook his head, revealing a glimmer of anguish. "This is a disgrace." Frank's voice rang out like a verdict, silencing the crowd around him, the timbre serving as a wake-up call. This was no longer a story about a mere passenger. It was about dignity, about those who sacrificed for freedom. Meanwhile, Richard, his face ashen, his oversized suit hanging on his thin frame, stepped back a pace, then turned to guide Harrison toward the first aid area. But just as he opened his mouth to explain, Paul, the senior personnel manager in a sharp navy suit, appeared at his side. Paul cleared his throat, his tone polite but strained. "Colonel, we apologize for the misunderstanding. We will book you on the next available first-class flight." Of course. No sooner were the words spoken than the atmosphere erupted anew. A woman near the desk shouted, "A misunderstanding? What have you done?" Her cry, laced with bitter outrage, filled every corner. Paul swallowed hard, clearly realizing that an empty apology could not extinguish the blaze of anger. Phones shot aloft, flashes blinking furiously, capturing every moment. The let him fly tweet count climbed rapidly, from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands of engagements. Comments overflowed with praise for Harrison, Frank, and calls for justice. At last, Harrison spoke, his voice rare above the din. "If no one speaks up, I will still stand here. This isn't about me. It's about the respect owed to the soldier I am escorting." Every word etched itself into the air, compelling all to pause and listen. A hush fell. Then a smattering of applause broke out. At first, a few claps, then swelling into a rhythmic wave. That applause was more than support for Harrison. It was the collective voice of empathetic hearts, honoring a silent sacrifice. In that moment, Harrison felt the power of community, the force of public opinion, not to create scandal, but to affirm the value of every person who serves the nation. Around him were no longer strangers, but comrades, united in condemning injustice and affirming faith in what is right. Though no physical gale blew through the terminal, this media storm stirred every corner. Calls to the airline's hotline would now demand answers. Emails to its board would carry demands for justice. Every network light pulsed with #LetHimFly, making it impossible for Blue Sky to ignore the voices of tens of thousands. Night seemed to fall early as the sky beyond the terminal windows deepened to purple. Yet beneath the yellow lights, Harrison stood firm, unbowed by darkness or red tape, carrying the hope of a waiting family and countless fallen comrades. And when the final applause died away, leaving only the soft echo of footsteps on tile, Colonel Harrison offered a faint smile, not of joy, but of resolve. The resolve to fulfill his final promise, to bring Private Michael Dawson home. In the hearts of tens of thousands who had stood with him, he saw justice shining brighter than ever. In the moment when tension reached its peak, the sounds around seemed to fade, leaving only labored breathing and gazes fixed on the check-in desk. In unison, the passengers, once noisy, fell silent, as though awaiting a miracle. Then, through the automatic glass doors, a commanding figure appeared. The man strode into the terminal with brisk steps, his crisp uniform gleaming under the neon lights, each crease perfectly pressed, a testament to absolute precision. It was Lieutenant Colonel James Carter, the Department of Defense's representative. Without any lengthy introduction, Lieutenant Colonel Carter walked straight to Colonel John Harrison, grasping the veteran's hand firmly, his eyes blazing like fire. Nearby passengers fumbled for their phones, eager to capture the historic moment, the distinguished infantry officer moving through the stunned crowd, exuding rare authority. "Colonel," Carter's steady voice rang out, every word an unshakable promise. "We've received the full report. The Pentagon has arranged a private military flight for you. Transport is ready on the runway." He gave no further details, no procedural explanations. His concise words carried the weight of the state and an understanding of the noble duty Harrison and soldiers like Michael Dawson had fulfilled. Instantly, the crowd held its breath. Then whispers erupted everywhere. People gasped in amazement. "The military's stepping in! Oh my God, they really intervened!" Emotions surged like a breached dam. Phones rose higher, flashes blinking furiously, documenting the moment when military authority met unbreakable camaraderie. Paul, the senior Blue Sky manager, turned a ghastly shade of green, rushed forward, stammering, "Sir, we're truly trying to resolve this." But Lieutenant Colonel Carter did not deign to look his way. He merely nodded once, voice cold as steel. "This matter will be settled, not by threats, but by fact. When the call of national duty sounds, no commercial power can stand in its way." In that instant, Harrison felt a new vitality surge through his chest. He turned to Frank, the Marine veteran who had stood by him since the start of this media battle. Their eyes met, no words needed, only profound gratitude. Harrison nodded, his voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you." Frank offered a simple, proud smile, eyes reflecting the hardships he had endured. "We take care of our own." In that moment, the gap between active officer and retired soldier vanished. They were brothers united by one ideal: to honor sacrifice and ensure that fallen soldiers are never forgotten. Meanwhile, Sarah, the young woman who had been live streaming, kept her eyes glued to her phone, panning the camera across the terminal. She captured Frank's quiet smile, the brief handshake between Carter and Harrison, the brilliant light in the colonel's eyes. Occasionally she looked up, focusing on the crowd where strangers turned united, clasping hands and applauding. Mary, Jake, and dozens of other passengers, young and old, were no longer mere spectators. They had become spiritual comrades. Each held their phone aloft, recording the thunderous applause. That applause was not only to celebrate the new flight arrangement, it was a declaration. They stood for justice. They stood for those who sacrificed to protect freedom. Amid the din of the crowd, Harrison adjusted his officer's cap, his short-sleeve uniform tracing the strength in his shoulders. He did not rush back to the check-in desk. Instead, he walked resolutely toward the dedicated exit for the military flight. His steps carried a mission far greater than any commercial journey: to bring home the remains of Private Michael Dawson, a young soldier whose eyes brimmed with aspiration, to his homeland. Paul and Emily could only gape as Carter swept them aside, leading the staff to clear the way for the military convoy. Outside the glass doors, a U.S. military aircraft bearing its flag idled on the tarmac, engines rumbling, as though poised to swallow every barrier that had once stood between Harrison and his solemn duty. The terminal fell into an uncanny silence. Only the footsteps of dozens of people remained, officers and veterans, airline staff and passengers, all moving in step with one man, Colonel John Harrison. Every footfall seemed to carve a path of gratitude and reverence, imprinting itself on the minds of all who witnessed it. Sarah's phone screen continued to capture every moment. Comments danced across her live stream. "Share this far and wide. The real hero is the Colonel. God bless USA." The #let him fly #cloud swept across every major social platform. Blue Sky could no longer remain silent. They would have to face the strongest wave of protest in aviation history. Then, at the dedicated exit, Harrison paused. He turned slightly, his gaze settling on Frank, Sarah, Mary, Jake, and the once anonymous now allies. In his eyes was not only gratitude, but a promise. "We will never let a fallen soldier be forgotten." Together, they watched his steps carry him toward the aircraft. Outside, the Phoenix sky shifted to the gray of dusk, as if echoing everyone's sentiment of thanksgiving. When the military plane's door opened, Harrison ascended, his dignified figure resembling a banner of human dignity unfurled against the sky. The terminal erupted once more in applause, this time not to welcome someone, but to bid farewell to a journey of courage and justice, beyond any story of how a soldier was treated. This was proof of the power of community spirit, where each individual can speak out and effect change. And in the final moment, as the aircraft door closed, Harrison's simple smile flickered through the window, a farewell and a message. The mission is complete, but the story of loyalty and honor will echo forever. The terminal returned to its daily rhythm, yet for every witness, that moment would never fade. Blue Sky Airlines thought that a brief apology would quell the public outcry, but they were gravely mistaken. Within 48 hours, the company's stock plunged by 10%, leaving glaring red figures on the ticker and the specter of a widespread boycott. On social media, the hashtag Boycott Blue Sky rapidly garnered millions of engagements, accompanied by posts urging customers to avoid the airline, and fierce condemnations of its discriminatory treatment of Colonel Harrison, who had merely been fulfilling his final promise to a fallen comrade. It did not stop there. Veterans groups across the United States filed suit against Blue Sky, alleging violations of equal rights protections and insults to the dignity of a soldier who sacrificed his life. On Veterans Alliance forums, heated discussions erupted. "We fought and died to protect freedom, yet we are being shunned on our own soil." Some posts called for protests outside Blue Sky's headquarters. Others sent blunt messages to its leadership. "We will not accept half-hearted apologies. We demand clear answers and concrete actions, no more empty words." The CEO of Blue Sky was forced onto national television, his face gaunt after days of media crisis. He called the incident an unfortunate misunderstanding and vowed to learn a profound lesson, pledging to review all security procedures, from staff training to upgrading systems for recognizing military IDs and permits. But the public was not appeased. Clips of his interview were spliced and shared with skeptical captions. A misunderstanding? How many more misunderstandings until this ends? Meanwhile, Colonel John Harrison continued his solemn duty. He and a small team quietly traveled to the outskirts where Private Michael Dawson's family awaited. The scene was neither grand nor ostentatious, simply a dignified ceremony in the young soldier's modest home. Relatives gathered around the flag-draped casket, their eyes red and full of gratitude. Harrison returned each fragment of the remains, each authorization document, with absolute reverence. There were no cameras, no press, only muffled sobs and the faint smile of Dawson's mother, a woman who had sacrificed sleep itself waiting for this moment. It was a sacred instant, where grief and hope converged. Harrison stood silently, observing the bereaved family, his eyes conveying both profound respect and steadfast resolve. When the ceremony concluded, he bowed before Michael's portrait, as though swearing that no matter where life took him, the young soldier's memory would never fade. He gently removed a small medal, pinned it to Mrs. Dawson's left lapel, a silent gesture laden with meaning. This was the honor Michael deserved. Yet the greatest surprise arrived a week later. Sarah, the young woman who had bravely live-streamed the Phoenix airport events, received a formal letter from the Pentagon. It invited her, Frank, Jake, and Mary to a special honors ceremony at the Department of Defense. We cordially invite the citizens who helped defend the honor of U.S. soldiers to a ceremony at the Pentagon, where Colonel John Harrison will be awarded the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the letter read. Sarah wept as she read the words. She recalled the anxious moments filming with her phone, the waves of support from strangers, and now her faith was rewarded with an official invitation from the nation's military powerhouse. Frank, his hair silvered by time, stood astonished, the invitation in hand. Jake and Mary barely believed their eyes when they saw their names on the guest list. The honors ceremony took place in a stately hall. The American flag hung high. The audience comprised distinguished veterans and civilians. Lieutenant Colonel James Carter, who had intervened at the airport, stood solemnly beside the Secretary of Defense. When Colonel Harrison's name was announced to receive the Defense Meritorious Service Medal, the room erupted in thunderous applause. Harrison ascended the podium, wearing his uniform weathered by war and hardship. He bowed his head to accept the medal, his expression composed yet brimming with quiet pride. He did not seek personal glory, but bore witness to the power of courage and solidarity sweeping across America. Sarah, Frank, Jake, and Mary, those who had sparked the wave of change, were invited to stand alongside him, their eyes shining with emotion. Each received a bouquet of fresh flowers and heartfelt thanks from the secretary. You young citizens and those with years of experience have shown that when citizens speak out, nothing can obscure truth and justice. The story of Phoenix Airport, of Harrison's steadfastness, of the community's strength, became a living testament to an eternal truth. Respect should not need a viral video to exist. When we unite our voices, injustice cannot hide behind invisible walls. And if next time there is no live stream, each of us must still keep the flame of justice alive, for honor and for those silent sacrifices. What do you think of this journey? Where are you watching from? Share your thoughts and location in the comments below. And if you agree that justice and respect should never remain silent, don't forget to like and subscribe, so we can spread this story far and wide.